let's see where we're at. 31.5 front. 34.5 rear.
That's too f***ing high!
Welcome back to the laboratory. We're working on the Corvette yet again. We got another project that we're trying to strike off the list of things to get done on this thing. So at some point in the past, somebody replaced the rear spring in this Corvette, and they replaced it with the dump truck version of the rear Corvette spring because it sits way too high in the rear and it's way too stiff. So to correct that, we could replace that spring with the correct leaf spring, get the ride height back down to something more reasonable, or we can do what I like to do is Corvette projects on a Corvair budget. We can just replace the rear suspension bolt with a longer bolt. Now, this bolt has a lot of thread on it, so we can adjust the ride height to basically whatever we want it to be, depending on how we put these bolts in. Now, in the 69 Corvette specification book, it actually lists what the ride height is supposed to be, and it gives you a measurement location on the rocker panel front and rear of the car. So we're going to consult the book, we're going to measure the actual ride height according to factory specifications, see how much the rear needs to come down, and then replace the bolts that are in there with the longer bolts at the appropriate length. Let's see how we go. All right, so from our specs, they're saying we need to be 30.5 inches behind center of the front wheel, 24 inches in front of the rear wheel. So we've taken our plumb bob, okay, we found the wheel center, we set our tape measure to that. We're using a square here so we can go in deep. And right at 24 inches, we've laid down some tape there. And then we did the same thing over here behind the front wheel. We've got our 30.5 inch mark here. So at this point, we can take our measurements, knowing that, well, let's not spoil it. Let's see what we got and then see what it's supposed to be. All right, so taking our measurement here, we're supposed to be at the bottom of the rocker molding here, so we're right at 8.5 inches. It's supposed to be, which is the J and the K. The K, okay, so between curb weight and shipped weight, it changes. So if you got like a full tank of gas, it's going to come down a little bit. But we're supposed to be between 8.1 and 7.8. And yeah, we're a little bit high there. Let's see where we are on the front side. So on the front side, we're at about 7 3/4. And we're supposed to be at 7.86 on the front side. So a little low on the front, quite a bit high on the rear. But on average, on the rear, we're supposed to be about 7.9. And that's really, well, 7.86 is what the spec is at the front. And 7.9 is probably a reasonable average at the rear. So basically we want the car to be level. So we need to bring back the rear down a little bit. Now we're moving it down at the center of the wheel here from the spring. So the amount that we need to move here and the amount that we need to move here are different, but fortunately that's really simple trigonometry. So we can do that math and figure out how much here needs to be, how much there. So let's do that. Okay, so if this is our Corvette, if this is the front wheel and this is the rear wheel, we're measuring at a point here, again, 24 inches in front of the rear wheels. The overall wheelbase here is 98 inches for a 69 Corvette. So simple trigonometry says that the ratio between that height there and that length there is going to be the same as the ratio between that height there and the overall length here. So I went back and I remeasured a little bit more precisely, and we're about, not quite an inch too high here, but to make life easy, we'll say it's an inch. So 1 inch divided by 98 minus 24, 74. So 1 divided by 74, okay, times the 98 length now. I don't know what buttons I pressed there. Let's try that again. 1 divided by 74, okay, times 98. Gives us 1.32. So, all right, we got interrupted by the furnace firing up, which is like right next to me here. I had like 2 more seconds to talk. Anyway, the calculations say we need to reduce this by like 1.3, a little over 1.3 at the axle, but We don't want to go overboard, so we're going to shoot for like 1.25, like 1.25, between 1 and 1.25, somewhere like that. We don't want the rear of the car to be too low. We certainly don't want it lower than the front. So that's our goal. So let's get the wheels off and let's get those bolts changed. All right, now that we got the wheels off, and on that subject, you may have noticed that I've been experimenting with the hubcaps. I haven't decided yet if I'm going to do that or the rally wheels. I really like the look of the old Apollo astronaut Corvettes, and they all had the deluxe hubcaps on them, so I might keep it. Interesting tidbit is that when you got the hubcaps, you still had the rally wheel underneath it. You just didn't get the trim ring and the center cap. Anyway, back to business here. So this is what we're looking at now. So this is the bolt that we need to replace. So with a longer bolt, the spring is going to deflect the same amount because we've got the same amount of weight. So with a longer bolt, it's going to end up moving this up relative to the spring, which moves the wheel closer to the car, which moves the car closer to the ground. So how to get this thing out is, well, the bolt actually comes out the top of the control arm here. There's a hole there. And to get at that hole, well, we need to remove all of the mechanism here from the sway bar first so that we've got access to that hole. On the bottom, there's a cotter pin and there's a nut here. So how and this spring is still very much under tension. So how we're going to accommodate that tension and try not to kill ourselves is we'll use this C-channel piece of steel that I've got handy here. And when I jack it up, you can see at that point now, the bolt is, the tension is off the bolt, and with the C-channel we can get in here and we can still take the nut off. Now, obviously I'm going to take the cotter pin out first before I do this, and we'll buzz the nut a little bit to make sure it's loose, and then we'll jack it up, pull the nut out, and then figure out how much longer we need to go with the new bolts, and then we'll cut these things to a reasonable length so they're not dragging on the ground. And I think in the end I'm going to want to drill a hole through these bolts too and put a cotter pin on there just for safety. It does have Stover nuts on here that are like locking nuts, but I never trust that stuff. If I put a cotter pin through there, then I know it's not going to come undone, because if that comes undone when you're going 60 miles an hour, it is not going to be a good day for you. Anyway, so let's get the sway bar stuff off and get that cotter pin out. So here's the old bolt, here's the new bolt, and this is roughly where the nut was when we took it apart. So we need an inch and a quarter longer here, which puts the nut on the new bolt about there. So I guess I don't really have to cut much off this bolt. I'm still going to drill it for a cotter pin just to be ultimate safe. But the good news is we don't got to shorten the bolt. So let's drill a couple of holes in these things and then let's get them in the car. We got the new bolt in, and I'm just tightening up the nut here, and from my measurements on the bench, we want to have about a 1/2 inch of thread showing here, so I'm pretty close to that now, maybe just another half turn. You can see the hole here already is exposed where the cotter pin is going to go through. And once we've got this in, then I just need to reassemble all the sway bar stuff again, and then go back and do it again on the other side. Once we got that all wrapped up, we'll put the wheels back on, we'll lower the thing down, and we'll go back and we'll take another measurement and see if we nailed it. If not, we can always go back and adjust on this thing. All right, so we got it all back together. I haven't put the hubcap on yet because, again, I'm deciding back and forth between the Raleigh wheels and the hubcap. But it did come down, but it didn't come down as much as I expected. So if we measure it now, we're down about 8 inches. So it came down a 1/2 inch at the rocker here instead of like 0.9-ish that I was expecting. So it could be a couple of reasons. One is when we lifted the car up, it kind of tucks the rear tires in, and letting it back down, there's still tension in there. So might have to roll the car back and forth a few times before the tires find their happy spot, and it might settle out a little bit more yet. The other thing that might happen is the bushings in there on the top and bottom might have to find their happy spot. So just find a typical Winnipeg road and drive down it for 5 minutes, and that should tune that up. So I suspect it's going to settle down a little bit more. The good news is we didn't overshoot, so it's not sitting too low, but it didn't quite come down as low as I expected. Anyway, it is what it is. Quick job, should have been a quick job. In real time, this is like 6 hours, but that's the way things go. Anyway, if you watch this long, thanks for watching. As usual, if you subscribe, I appreciate it. Appreciate all the comments and likes and everything else over the years. Thanks to all you guys. As usual, be kind, be humble. See you next time. Welcome back to the laboratory. We're working on the Corvette yet again, trying to knock another project off the list. Some point, take 3. So we're going to get out the shop manual and check that, and this is just, this just sucks. So, and then we're going to install those bolts at the right length to, yeah, see now I don't have the bolts in my hand either. Okay, just scrap all of that and we're going to start over again. So many ones and zeros are being wasted. Welcome back to the laboratory. We're working on the Corvette again, trying to, it's going to be a good blooper reel for this video. Let's see how we go. That sounds Australian. How you going? Make sure you don't get the beard in there. All right, now that we got that, you're not the time-lapse one, right? We need about 1.32 inches here to get this down to where we want it there. Now, we don't want, that's a furnace running. Take 4.